to Cooking with the Best. I am the best, Micah Reeves. Today we are creating a venison steak. Venison, as most of you probably know, is another word for deer meat. I shot this deer just a couple weeks ago, and today we're going to be cooking it up butterfly style with a little bit of flour, seasoning salt, steak seasoning, and it's almost incomprehensible that it is not butter. If you're a college student, like I am, it's actually a pretty good idea to try to go and get your hunting license and shoot a deer. It's only about $25 for a hunting license over in the state where I live. Of course, price varies depending on where you live, but for $25 you can shoot a deer that is about 50 pounds of meat. So you get 50 pounds of meat for $25, and it could be a pretty good investment if you're good with a rifle. And you can fill your refrigerator over here up with meat. We all know that college students like filling things up with meat, don't they? Alright, so one of the first things you're going to want to do is grab a knife. So let's grab a knife here. We're going to butterfly. We're going to butterfly this steak today, and this little silvery part on here, that's called silver skin. It's just part of the muscle membrane, I believe. I'm not really quite sure, but you can leave that on. Some people like to take it off, but you know, I've found that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really change the taste or texture for me, but for those who are very specific about their meat styles, you can take it off if you want. But I'm going to leave it on just because it's such a pain in the butt to take it off. You're going to flip your meat onto this side there. Take your knife, make sure it's fairly decently sharp, and just make a nice little incision right at the peak of the muscle right there, and you want to spread it wide. Now, of course, butterflying your meat means that you're going to want to make it look something like a butterfly. So you're just going to keep spreading it, getting it wider and wider all the way down until you're just about through the entire piece of meat, but you don't want to go all the way through. You just kind of want to get it spread out pretty nice. And that's looking pretty good. After touching the meat, you should probably wash your hands. Alright, you take your flour, you take your delicious seasoning salt. And you're going to want to mix your flour and your seasoning salt together at probably about a 2 flour, 1 seasoning salt ratio. So probably something like that. Of course, not all of this salt and flour is going on that steak. This is just a rub at this point. So what you want to do, the pan should probably be dry. What you want to do is just kind of use your hand and just kind of mix it up. For those of you who like cocaine, try to just use your kind of, dabbling up skills. And if you want, you could even use the knife. Just kind of make it all nice and even, and scoop it over and mix it in with itself. That's not looking too bad. I might honestly add just a little bit more salt, probably just about that much more. And then we also want to add, this is optional, but I have here a little bit of steak seasoning. I don't really know what's in it. My roommate gave it to me and I used it a couple last times I made steaks, but it's very nice, so we're just going to add a little bit in there. Alright, I would say that looks pretty good right there. So you just kind of want to flatten it down and get the surface area of the flour to be probably about the same as the size of meat that you're going to slap into there. So we'll take the meat, pick it up, just kind of rest it on top. Of course, you don't want to get too much flour on it. You just kind of want to pat it down. We're not deep frying anything today, so we're not trying to coat the entire thing in flour. We're just getting the flour on there just as kind of a extra texture maker. You don't want this to taste like flour, don't want it to taste like breading, just want it to taste like steak. Probably just about like that. Give it a little bit of a rub to spread out the flour on all surface areas, maybe even add a little bit to your fingers and spread them into spots that don't have flour on it. Probably just like that. So now we're going to scoot over to the pan side of things and get the pan prepared to put the steak in it. So here we have the pan. We're going to be using some delicious canola oil here today. We're going to be placing that inside the pan. Not too much, of course. We don't want the steak to taste like canola oil. The only reason why we are using the canola oil is so that the pan becomes a non-stick surface so that the steak doesn't stick to it. And then you're going to want to spread the canola oil around pretty good. Make sure you cover every flat surface of the pan. Another good reason why we use canola oil is because since it covers up every part of the surface of the pan, and since the pan is metal and the canola oil is a liquid, it increases heat distribution across the slice of meat. And we all know, heat on your meat feels good. Set your burner to probably about, I'd say, 3/4 of the way hot, so not all the way up, but not all the way down, probably to about 3/4 heat. You're going to want to take your butter then, it's almost incomprehensible it's not butter. Open it up and take a knife. I'm not really sure how much butter you want to put on. It's all to personal preference. But this is the flavor right here. We're not using butter for anything non-stick purpose. This is the flavor. So we're just going to put the butter on there. Probably about that much would be okay. And you're going to let it sit there until the butter completely melts. And once the butter is completely melted, then you know that it is about ready to put your steak on. Another purpose of butter is it also kind of creates a nice juicy texture for your steak. If you cook a steak for too long, then you'll lose the juices inside the pan. But by adding the butter into there, if you do lose some juices because you did cook it over long, the butter will then reabsorb the juices, which is a good thing. I don't know how well you can see that on the camera, but we're getting a little bit of bubbling going on, which means that it's almost ready. We're just trying to wait for that butter to melt. It seems like I might have put just a little bit too much butter on there, but of course, you can't really go wrong with butter and steak because I'm not putting the butter on the steak after it's done cooking. It's just kind of bathing in it, so you can't have a bath with too much water in it. You know what I'm saying? Alright, there you can see that the butter is melted. So now we take our steak back into the equation, and I'm just going to kind of dab it up again inside of this little mixture here and just kind of reestablish all of that salt and all of that flour in there. We're going to coat this in flour and salt again just because, you know, it kind of sinks into the meat a little bit when you're letting it sit for a little while. So you're going to want to get the steak until it looks about like that. That would be pretty good. Agitate your stuff a little bit, agitate your oil a little, and then you slap this on there. Remember, we're not deep frying anything today, so don't add too much oil and don't add too much flour. Just enough to where it makes a delicious texture. It's alright to slosh around your oil a little bit and get it around the steak. Just don't try to like get it on top or anything like that because it'll ruin the crust that you're going to get on top of your steak. It is alright though to, however, put everything towards the side and just kind of let it sit there like that. You get kind of some side action going. Everybody likes the side action. When cooking this, you're going to want to wait until the meat on this side is cooked just halfway up, and you're going to see the meat change color. You're going to want to wait until the color gets halfway up the slice of meat, and once that happens, we'll flip it over. And right there we can see that the cook is about halfway up the steak. So now we're going to grab one side and flip it over to right there. And then what you're going to want to do on this side is just wait until it starts bleeding, and I'll show you once that happens. So as you can see, it's starting to bleed just a little bit right there in the center butterfly crack. But we're just going to wait a little bit more and let it bleed a little bit more. The more you bleed, the less rare it will be. So once it starts bleeding a little bit, then technically that's medium rare. But I'm just going to let it go a little bit more. I like mine a little bit, I like it medium rare, but a little bit towards the medium well side of medium rare. So a little bit cooked medium rare. As you can see, it is starting to bleed quite a bit more, so I believe it's just about finished once that is the bleeding style. So, turn off the heat and get it onto a plate. I do like to soak it in the corners one last time just to try to get all of those juices back inside the meat. And once you do that, you can pick it up and transfer it over to your plate. Make sure to get the pan off the heat just so it doesn't cook and burn the oil there, because once you have burned oil on a pan, it's kind of hard to get it off. Alright, there you can see the steak's looking pretty juicy right there, and I'd say pretty darn good. So, a nice way to check the tenderosity of your steak is just by grabbing a butter knife. One of the biggest scams in U.S. history has been that steak knives are necessary to eat steaks. I'm going to eat this with a butter knife because I am almost 100% certain that the tenderosity of this steak is absolutely perfect. You don't need a steak knife to cut a perfectly cooked steak. And as you can see right there, even with this super dull butter knife, I am able to cut this steak because it is absolutely delicious. First bite of steak going in. And that has got to be the best steak, best venison steak recipe I have ever made in my life. I'm just going to do a little cross section for you all here. That's what you want the center of your steak to look like. Just going to get a little bit better view for you here. Oh yeah, that is exactly what you want it to look like. It might be a little bit more rare than I would like, but the more rare it is, the more delicious. Alright, and we are all finished. A delicious steak ready for the eating. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. And if you want more, please tell me down in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. God bless, my friends.